This presentation will focus on the combined offering plan. And this, in many ways, was put together so that we can help those of you within this division and other divisions that are present with what I would call the fundamentals of the combined offering plan, one of the three plans that we have in the world today and voted by the world church. I'm going to start the presentation by going big. That is to give us again the broader picture of stewardship. And that means that I may have to do a little bit of review on some of the materials some of you are familiar with, others don't, but I think that's necessary before we focus our discussion on the COP. I will finish the presentation with a video presentation, one of the videos that we produce under the Gifts of Heaven DVD. That was provided to the World Church a few years ago, but we can easily duplicate and make this available through the division office. So join me as we will look specifically at one of the offering plans that we have in the world today. I want to take us back when we started in this convention with that affirmation of a biblical reality that Jesus is Lord of all. I want to take you now to my favorite pizza, the colorful pizza. Now recognize that the colorful pizza represents the totality of our human life and experience. Stewardship is again that declaration and statement that Jesus is Lord of the universe. He is Lord of the church and He is the Lord of our lives. And that within the context of our human experience, we know that there's a part of us that deals with our worship. There's something in us that yearns to connect with the supernatural, the divine, as it were. And in this presentation, I'm referring to this part of our experience as our worship. Again, taking you to the colorful pizza, there's also part of us that wants to be part of a cohesive unit, a cohesive whole. And this is where leadership comes into the picture. And grateful to Larry for his effort to try and address some parts of stewardship as it relates to the way that we lead the church in our different location. Going back to the colorful pizza, we are social beings, and as such we want to connect with other people. And relationship is a key part of this understanding of Christian stewardship. Additionally, and this has been reminded to us by our friends and leaders from trust services and planned giving, that in addition to our earned income, there are things that we have accumulated in life. This I have referred to on the basis of this model as possessions. And then of course we have our finances, and this is where tithe and offerings come in. Finally, we have a language, which is another subsystem of our human experience. Now, as you've heard me talk about this particular model, I want to suggest to you that we could easily add another subsystem. One of those subsystems would probably include the arts, our songs, the rituals that we use both in our local situation and the church as such. But sufficient to say that when we talk about stewardship, we're talking about our total life, and it's about the response of the total person to all of God in Christ Jesus. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, when we talk about financial stewardship, we are specifically talking of tithe and offerings. Again, some of you have seen this. I'm going to simply bring it back to provide that big picture of what we need to address this afternoon. We talk about tithe as belonging to God. Offerings, we say, it also belongs to God. From the moment there is a transfer of ownership, when we make that decision in our minds that we're going to give a certain amount of our income to God, then that becomes the property of God. We talk about tithe as holy, remembering that the primary usage of holy in Scripture is that something has been set aside by God for Himself. When we look at the record of the Holy Word, we know that even offerings are holy. Tithe, God specifies certain things, and I have often referred to the 3 P's, the 3 things that God specified with regards to tithe. That God specified the percentage, God specified the place where tithe is to be returned to, and God specified the people to be supported with tithe. Offerings, on the other hand, and this is where offerings are different, particularly with regards to the percentage or the amount. God does not specify our giving with offerings. That is a decision that we make as believers and disciples of Jesus Christ. We know that the returning of tithe is an act of a worship. It is something spiritual. The same is also applied to offerings. Tithe, as I've alluded to in a moment ago, it is about our worship, and in that sense it is spiritual, even though it may be expressed or given in monetary form. Tithe, it is an expression of our loyalty, and offerings, they are an expression of our gratitude or thanksgiving. Again, I am simply going through some of the stuff that you're familiar with so that we will have a good foundation for what we want to cover specifically with the combined offering plan. Now we know that we have made some shifts, we have made some change, and I'm thinking specifically at this point in time of what we have traditionally called the calendar of offerings. Calendar of offerings, and I've abbreviated that to COO. On the other hand, and this is the plan where most of our divisions are at right now, it is the combined offering plan, or the COP. Now this is where you need to start to take some note of what is the difference between these 2 plans that we have in the church. We're not going to talk about the personal giving plan. That is a plan which is unique to North America. In fact, only North America operates on the PGP. But most divisions as of this time are now working on the COP that you see on the right. So with the calendar of offerings, we have a lot of offerings, many offerings, multiplicity of offerings. And that is one of the reasons why as a church we have tried to address this fact that just too many offerings. Sometimes people don't even know what they are giving to. One of the advantages, I think, of the COP is the fact that irrespective of how many times you may be collecting offerings on the Sabbath, including Friday night, everything is pooled together. All the money that we collect, we're talking here of offerings, tithe is not included. Everything that we collect, they are put into one basket or one pool, and then of course that is divided according to a formula that is voted by your divisions. The calendar of offerings is quite complicated, and you can just imagine if you're a local person, a lay person somewhere in the country with no understanding of bookkeeping or accounting, it's quite a task in trying to know how to deal with these different offerings that we collect on any given Sabbath. Again, one of the advantages or the strength of the COP, in my view, is the fact that it is very simple. You put everything together, there's a formula, whether it is 60-40, 50-50, whatever the case may be. So it's not hard to separate those percentages at the local church. When you look very closely at the calendar of offerings, for example, the Sabbath school, which is one of the first offerings that we will collect on any given Sabbath. Now, did you know, if you're following the calendar of offerings, by policy, everything that we give in Sabbath school, goes to the General Conference. So the General Conference, in many ways, is the main beneficiary of the offerings with the COO or the calendar of offerings. With the COP, every level of the church benefits, and that is also an advantage and strength of the COP that we'll be talking about specifically in a moment. The COO or the calendar of offering depends to a large extent on a good promotion. Of course, if a promotion is good, if a promotion is organized well, then people would respond because of the information provided. COP, on the other hand, it's not about a particular program that is driven or promoted, but people give because they recognize that this is part of their worship. The motivation is different. It's not about my particular project or a particular ministry that I like, but it's about giving to God, and this is part of our worship. So that's just a quick overview of the differences and perhaps the benefits of each of these two plans that we have in the world today. I want to very quickly touch on the theology or the biblical base of our giving in offerings. This, of course, will also apply to the returning of a tithe. Again, when we talk about financial stewardship in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we are talking of tithe and offerings. When we return tithe on any given Sabbath, and when we give our offerings of gratitude, we are acknowledging the creatorship of God. In the beginning, God. In the returning of tithe and the giving of our offerings, we are saying that we are partners with the divine. Fact of the matter is, as we look to Scripture, whether it is the Old Testament or New Testament, we know that we're here because of God's will. God has a purpose for our life. We represent God in the communities that we live in. We are indeed His partners in the returning of a tithe and the giving of offerings regularly. We are committing ourselves to the Lordship of Jesus. And again, this is a fundamental biblical principle both for stewardship and trust services, that Jesus is Lord of everything. My worship, my leadership, my relationships, my possessions, my finances, and my language. In the returning of tithe and the giving of offerings, we are recognizing the fact that what we receive in life, these are blessings of God that come to us because of His grace. Not because we are good, but because He is good. Not because we are faithful, but because He is faithful. It's about the grace of God in the world and in our lives. In the returning of tithe and the giving of offerings, this is our response of love and gratitude. That's the motivation. It's not about trying to appease God, but it's about worshiping Him who made the heavens and the earth. Revelation chapter 14. In the returning of a tithe and the giving of offerings, we are demonstrating our faith in Christ, particularly when the going is tough. Particularly when God's people, many of them, are not employed. I think of the recession in 2008. And I marvel as we look at the statistics, as we look at the figures, that while the economies of the world was going down, the faithfulness of our people, both in tithe and offerings, went up. And I don't think there is a human explanation for that, but there is a biblical explanation. It's about faithfulness to God, particularly when things are hard. In the returning of tithe and the giving of offerings, we are simply living out our covenant relationship with God. What do you say? Amen. Now that we've given that overview and tried to reestablish the biblical foundation for our giving, I would like to now move to the combined offering plan, or the COP. Now, some of this history was touched upon by Elder Mario Nino yesterday. But when we look to the early beginnings of the Adventist movement, we would realize that there was nothing formal in place to give support to our workers, whether they be evangelists, pastors, or teachers. In many ways, as you look or review this history, we'll find that somehow we have a system that was continually developing as we move along as a church. Here are some important point of reference for us. Again, this is part of the history. It wasn't until 1858 that a small group was established to start to think and study a way of supporting our workers. And finally, in 1859, as you see here, but also notice from the presentation of Elder Mario Nino, that what we have today, this system of benevolence, is not what we had right from the beginning. That we started simply by encouraging people to give a specific donation. That, of course, is not where we are today, but this history is important indeed. Here's an example that you can see of how they tried to have some resources to help our folks at that time who were providing services for the church. Again, here is another date that you may be interested in. This is part of our tradition, as it were. You travel all over the world, and you will discover, though there may be different text or wordings for the tithe envelopes, here is something that you can just about find in every church you travel in the globe. But again, we have the tithe offering started back in 1905. The South Pacific Division, and Dr. Schubert, who is from the South Pacific Division here, would be interested in this. But when you go to Sabbath school, where we started to pull together our members in developing a system that will go on for a long time in the support of mission. And I'm talking now of the PETCAN, a project of the World Church. But this, of course, this vessel, as you look at the history, took many of our missionaries to the territories of the South Pacific Division. And the reason why we bring that in here is the fact that that was part of a system or a scheme to bring these resources that we now call offerings in support of the mission of the church. Let me firstly give you the three offering systems that are approved by the church. And these three systems, all of them are in operation in the world today. Notice the abbreviations that I'm using here for your reference. The traditional one that we've had for a very long time is referred to as the Church Calendar of Offerings. Again, we're using the abbreviation COO to refer to that particular offering plan. The Personal Giving Plan, or the PGP, is the plan that we have in North America, and only North America operates on this plan. Now, one may ask the question, why do we have these many plans? Well, I think it's a realization of the diverse needs of the church, that there are different ministry contexts, and we no longer live in a world where one size fits all. We've got to be realistic and have a much broader understanding of mission. And part of that, of course, is something that the General Conference is trying to address at different times, which is why a few years ago we voted a principle of flexibility. That same principle apply to our offering plans. Now, the one that you are interested in for this presentation is the combined offering plan. I will make no effort in addressing some of the things that you know. For example, the percentage of distribution that was voted by your division, that you know. But I want to give you the basics and also the benefits, because I believe that if our people understand these things, then they would be faithful in contributing, knowing that their giving does make a difference to the mission of God in the world. So I want to turn my attention now to very quickly to these three, but spend most of the time with the combined offering plan. I'm going to invite you to participate in this presentation by reading some things on the screen that will also help us to stay awake at this time of the day. The church calendar of offerings. You see it on both screens, on both sides of the stage. Let's see if we can read this together. Everybody. With this plan, separate offerings are promoted and received based on the church calendar of offerings as voted by the General Conference and divisions. Now, this last sentence is very important. All loose offerings not in the envelope will go to the offering of the day. So a key feature of the calendar of offerings is the fact that at any given Sabbath, the church is giving to one particular project. Again, this is more for background information. You have moved on, but it's important for us to understand this in the bigger scheme of things. Let's look at the North American Division Plan, the PGP. Are you ready to read with me on the screen, everybody? With this plan, each member chooses the amount he or she wish to give to each of these three categories. Number one, the local church budget. Number two, the conference. And number three, the world church. This may cover, of course, the union, divisions, and general conference. Note, North America is the only division that operates on this plan. And that's obvious. North America has different dynamics in terms of its economy and also the needs of the church. So North America operates this particular plan. But here's one that we need to look at carefully or closely this afternoon. It's the combined offering plan, or the COP. Let's read together from the screen. With this plan, all offerings, note, including the 13 Sabbath school offering. That's why we say combined. Everything goes into the pool. Continue to read from the word received. Receive, go to one general fund with 50 to 60% retained at the local church. The remaining percentage is forwarded to the conference for distribution according to a formula voted by divisions in consultation with the General Conference. I think you understand that. Now, let me take a step backwards and simply give you the many offerings that we have and why we had to look for a simpler system because of the multiplicity of these many different offerings. So let me show some of these offerings to you. Actual offerings. Now, I'm talking here of Sabbath school only. We have the Sabbath school mission offering, which is collected for the first 12 Sabbaths of the quarter. Then you have the thank you offering. Then you have the mission extension offering. You have the annual sacrifice offering and also investment. But look at the two lines at the bottom. Now, did you know that all of these different offerings go to the one place? Which raises the question, so why have this many offerings if it's all going to the same place? Well, I suppose there was a reason back then, but it's time to simplify the system. here are some other offerings for your information. Now, by the way, even though you operate on the COP, there are percentages that are being set aside to meet all of these offerings that the church supports with regards to ministries and entities of the church. AWR, ADRA, Religious Liberty, Voice of Prophecy, Women's Ministry, TV Ministries, Youth Week of Prayer, GC Session, Lone Melinda, Andrews University, Health Ministry, Literature Evangelism, Education, and the list goes on. Now again, the point why I'm bringing this to your attention is to illustrate, but also to show the fact that we have so many offerings that we operate under the COO, or the calendar of offerings. Of course, this is an interesting question. Have you ever asked our people whether they know where this money or these offerings go to? But that's something you may want to ask them the next time you're talking to our people. So here's the challenge that we have as a church. The profusion of offerings may lead to confusion. In fact, I can tell you there's a lot of confusion when it comes to offerings. Tithe is fairly clear to a large extent. Offerings, people have all kinds of ideas, and partly because of the many offerings that we have as a church. Now, we must also be aware that the younger generation of the church have different values, and these young professional and young people would like to see immediate results. They have different values that before they give, they say, well, where is this going to? They ask questions. One of the concerns we have, and I'm referring to the calendar of offerings, is the fact that there appears to be a competition in entities as to who will get the most money with regard to their promotion. In the big picture, we know that there is a decline in terms of giving to a pool, but I suppose that is also part of the shifting values that we have in the world today. So what is the solution? It would seem to the church that the way to resolve some of these challenges is to come with a system that is much simpler to follow. And so here is the solution that you see here on the screen. Let's see if we can read these 3 pointers that you see on the screen. Number one, we need to simplify the offering system. Now, of course, there are people who are tasked with this work, treasury specifically, who work with money all the time, and they are the people that have been asked by the church over time to try and see how we can simplify our giving as a church. But there's no question, whether it is now or in the early part of our movement or church, that the systematic benevolence is the answer to some of these challenges that we've tried to look at this afternoon. And then, of course, finally, the World Church General Conference voted the COP, and for your information, I was looking at some of the information that we have. Out of the 13 divisions of the world, 9 divisions are working on the COP. So obviously, most of the church have now picked up on the COP and see the value of having something that is much simpler to follow. Here's a quotation from Spirit of Prophecy that again underlines the fact that we need to have the right motivation. We also need to have a system that will enhance the worship of our people with regard to their giving. Let me move now to some of the basics, some of the fundamental or the essence of the combined offering plan for your information. The combined offering plan is a system of distribution that is applied to offerings only. You know this, but I think we need to restate that for our hearing. We're not talking here of tithe, but we are talking specifically of offerings. It supports all levels of the church, from the local church or the local congregation to the General Conference. And of course, all of these entities are sustained with our giving as a people, with our offerings. So what does the COP looks like? What are some of these basic elements of the combined offering plan? Number one, all funds collected during the Sabbath school and the church service go to the one pool. Again, you'll see that's why we call it the combined offering plan. Everything goes into the one pool. Then, of course, we have the formula voted by the division in consultation with the General Conference. And again, you see that there's a bit of room depending on what is voted. Some divisions vote 50% for the local church, other divisions vote for 60%, but that's a provision made by the General Conference. The rest of the money, meaning the other 50% or 40% of the money, would go to the conference, and the conference will then follow through with a distribution as per the voted formula by your division. The money that goes to the General Conference, and I think, if my memory serves me right, all divisions that are on the COP, the 20% that goes to the General Conference, the General Conference will then put different percentages of that total money to the different ministries and also entities of the church that come under the umbrella of mission. Note the point at the bottom of the slide, and this is something which is important. The fact that your division may have operated for 10 or more years under the current formula, that doesn't mean that you'll stay with that formula forever. In fact, it is very important in my view, and the Inter-American Division did this not too long ago. After 10 years, I think it's important to go back and ask the question, are the needs of the church being served with the current distribution as per the formula? And then, of course, see if we need to revise this to make sure that the church is getting the benefits, specifically the local congregation. Again, this is just another quick reference to the formula as established by the General Conference. The last two lines is a reference to the local church. And I think this is something that we need to work with earnestly, to help our local churches develop a budget. And so the 50% or 60% that is retained, that goes to the budget of the local church, and it's divided according to the needs of the local church. Notice, of course, that in the main, the General Conference session offering is covered under the COP, but I know of a couple of divisions who still take up a separate offering, and that is okay. There is provision for that as well. Notice the point about project giving or giving to designated offerings, and all of the three plans have this provision. Whether it is the calendar of offerings or the personal giving plan in North America or the COP, there is still the provision that when somebody identifies a particular need for the local church or the world church, and they want to give specifically to that project or need, 100% of that offering will go to that need, and the church honors the wish of the giver. So let's go to the screen, see the last three lines that I've underlined. See if you can read that together, and I want to make sure that you understand that. Everybody, let's read from the screen. There is provision for project giving in the COP, and 100% of the money given to a designated offering will go to that specific offering and or need of the church. Again, we need to remind those that serve in treasury that they need to honor the desire or the need of the believer to give to a particular offering above and beyond our giving to the COP. So what are the benefits? I want to suggest to you that this is something that we really need to promote to our people, those divisions, and some of you are here, that have just made this shift or move. It's important that we highlight the benefits to our people. Again, it's about systematic giving. And systematic giving, as you see on the screen, it's not emotional. We're not putting pressure on people's emotional, but rather they think about their giving and they are giving systematically. It's not influenced by the person who is promoting that particular offering. It is not influenced by the type of program or ministry of the church, and it is not controlled by the donor. This is about worship. You give it to the Lord, and you trust that those people in leadership will exercise the stewardship that will make sure that this money or offering or resources given will go to support the mission of God and the church in whatever needs that come under the umbrella of mission and the COP. Systematic giving, I want to suggest to you, is empowered by the Holy Spirit. It is driven from within. It is an intentional act of worship. As I said before, the motivation, it's not about a particular program that we are driving, but rather it is a recognition that this is what I give to God as part of my worship. It comes from a joyful heart. You give with a sense of a joy that you are playing a part and you are part of the mission of God globally. And it's always focused on mission, whether that is local or global. Again, worship is significant, or it's a significant part of the COP. Without the constant appeals and calls for funds with different projects, worshippers have more of a sense of their giving as part of their relationship with God and gratitude for the blessings that they receive from Him. And again, it's about simplicity. The combined offering plan is easy for new and current members to understand. It is also easy for recording and accounting purposes for treasury people working at the local congregation. So how do we implement this? And I know that SSD, of course, had been operating on this plan for a long time. What we need to bring to your attention is the fact that stewardship plays an important part in the educating of our people, particularly if we're moving from the calendar of offerings to this new plan. People need to know, and stewardship carries a responsibility of educating our people on the principles and the benefit of the COP. I want to share with you a video, and this will be the end of our presentation on the COP. This video in many ways will pull together understanding of the three plans, but also the emphasis on worship. So just give me a second as I will make a shift to the video for us today.
Every perfect gift comes from above. God has always sought out a relationship with humanity. His love is revealed through the gift of life, the artistry of nature, abundant life-sustaining resources, and His abiding presence in our hearts. Even when we wandered from His will, He gave us His greatest gift, the gift of His Son. As a part of His great love for us, He calls us to become His sons and daughters. He invites us to become His heirs, stewards of His vast resources. As we accept His transforming power into our lives and dedicate our time, talent, and resources to Him, we have the privilege of becoming partners with him, ambassadors of his love, friends in his service, and in his great commission. The Seventh-day Adventist Church seeks to follow biblical principles. Each week, members gather to offer praise to God. They are invited to worship him through the systematic returning of tithes and giving of offerings. Tithe, which is 10% of an individual's income or increase in business, provides the foundation of funds that maintains the gospel-related ministries of the church throughout the world. All other expenses for the mission and operation of the church are dependent on offerings. Churches traditionally have followed a calendar of offerings. In a typical month, 2 Sabbaths are designated for the support of local church operation and outreach. 1 Sabbath is designated for the support of conference programs, and 1 is for the world budget. When a month has 5 Sabbaths, special offerings are collected for church entities, such as the Voice of Prophecy, Advent, Christian Record Services, Loma Linda University, and Adventist World Radio. In order to offer a more simplified, systematic giving plan, some conferences promote a program called the Personal Giving Plan. This plan calls for church members to prayerfully decide what percentage of their income they would like to give to support the mission of the church, and then systematically follow this plan each month. For example, church members may decide, beyond returning the Lord's tithe, they would like to give an additional percentage of their family income for offerings to God. They may decide on a certain percentage to support the local church program, another percentage to advance the work of God throughout the local conference, as well as a percentage for the world budget to maintain and advance the global outreach of the church. Even though the calendar of offerings program is still followed in many churches as a way to direct the loose offerings that are given, this personal giving plan has helped many members establish a partnership with God that is systematic and easier when planning the monthly household budget. In the year 2002, the World Church voted Annual Council to recommend a new simplified giving program called a Combined Offering Plan. Designed to simplify the process of giving, the Combined Offering Plan takes the personal giving plan one step further. All offerings given on every Sabbath, including Sabbath school offerings, are combined into one fund. This one fund is then distributed to support the various aspects of the mission of the church, locally and globally. The new simplified plan has only 2 designations: tithes and offerings. Just like the personal giving plan, members who follow this program would decide a percentage of income that they would like to give in offerings, and then specify that amount along with their tithe each month. Those who like to support a favorite ministry of the church may still do so by marking the offering envelope for a specific purpose. Undesignated offerings go to the combined fund for distribution. Under the combined offering plan, local churches use 50 to 60% of the offerings for operational costs and outreach programs of the local congregation. 20 to 25% of the fund is designated to support the global mission of the church, the world budget. And the remaining percentages support the local conference, union, and division offices as determined by each division. By simplifying the act of giving, the new combined offering plan makes it easier for church members to experience giving as a meaningful part of worship. The many different offering appeals are replaced by one simple plan, and giving is inspired by a personal relationship with God.
I won't be giving based upon the appeal that is given on Sabbath and how it hits my heartstrings. It will be based on a spiritual partnership with God, listening to the Holy Spirit, the quietness of my home, and planning my giving that way. The more we can focus on giving as worship, rather than a response to a stimulating appeal, the more systematic our giving becomes, the more regular it becomes, the easier it will be to develop strategic plans and budgets based upon that. But more than that, the more my partnership with God is based on principle rather than emotional urge.
The calendar of offerings will still be used in many churches, but the presentations will focus on providing information about the various entities and mission programs of the church, rather than on an emotional appeal. The reports given will show accountability of how the funds of the combined offering plan are being used to advance God's work around the world.
People want to know that the money that they give are being used according to what it is being given for.
Transparency and openness in the finances of the church are an absolute must. We are making an extra effort to make sure that it is open, that how we spend our money can be seen by our church members. It's never been a secret how we spend our money, but we haven't always been good reporting back and telling people how we are spending the money that they've given to the Lord's mission. We are now quite comprehensively reporting back to the committees at annual council time and at the spring meetings. We are reporting back to the church through the Adventist Review and through the news media of our own church. We are releasing to our own members a broad base of information about how the money is spent. We want people to know how we are spending as a church the money that we give to the Lord.
God has shown his love to us by giving us the wealth of heaven. Every good gift we possess is a gift from above. After all he's done for us, God invites us into a friendship with him and invites us to be faithful stewards of his vast resources. As we worship him with our gifts, we participate in his work of love to the world. As heirs of God and as his friends, we have the privilege of working